Hey everybody, if you need a little help understanding the diagram and the phases of swallowing and you're trying to make it make sense in your notes, you may need some diagrams. So you can make some stop phase animations or just kind of freeze frame drawings of what happens in each of the phases. And you'll see these online if you Google some diagrams, but this might be helpful as well. You can also download a PDF that is located on my lesson materials so that you can better illustrate your notes. So we're going to start by drawing a nose and then the top of a head. And it doesn't matter if it's cute or not. Okay, mine head is a little lumpy, that's okay. And then draw a lower lip and inside of the oral cavity, drop it down, and a lower jaw and chin and neck. That's all you need. All right, so then we're going to section off and draw the soft palate and uvula that kind of dingle dangles down. Take this across like a mustache flapping in the wind, divide it into two, and you'll find your hard palate and soft palate. What we can do here, a lot of times the tongue will project kind of up and to the roof of the mouth like this. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to take this line that we drew, drop the tongue down on the diagonal, and curve it back and connect it to the forward half of the neck. That's plenty. Okay, that'll still get the job done. Then we're also going to draw the first flap to take notice of. That's the epiglottis. So draw yourself kind of a flap there, a lid, if you will. That lid comes across and seals off the larynx and trachea. So that is this front tube. Okay. This front tube is divided from the back tube because there's a rather meaty muscle that is kind of like a center divide, a median, if you will, kind of like on a road that is right here. And then we're going to avoid the complication of drawing all of the vertebrae. And we're just going to use the back muscle of the esophagus and draw that here and connect it up to the back of the neck. So now we have two tubes, 1, 2. So now we have all of the working parts that you're going to need to finish off this diagram. And actually, I'm going to make a little bit of an adjustment to my soft palette just because I want it to seem like it is going to be able to reach across all the way across to the back of the neck to seal this off. Now, if you want, we haven't drawn the nasal cavity, and we can do that. You can just kind of create a curve and section that off the back of the neck. So now you have a nasal passage. All right, so now we can just label all of these things. You can see my more fancy diagram that I talked about in the earlier video for some of this, but we can label the nasal cavity. These are vital to know. I'm just going to add the things that are super important to know. So the nasal cavity is pretty important. The nasopharynx, okay, the oropharynx. Of course, the soft palate and uvula. That up there. The tongue is relatively important in the first phase. The oral cavity is also important in the first phase. You've got to know the epiglottis. You've got to know this lower airway, either by the larynx or trachea. I don't care which one you use. And then the esophagus. You've got to know that. Okay, so these are the main regions that I really, really need you to know by name to discuss this. So if we type them in, nasal cavity, where air goes, soft palate, and uvula. Okay, that's the dingle dangle punching bag. This is the nasopharynx. Okay, this is the oropharynx, the mouth throat. This is the esophagus, the flattened tube. When you draw this, make sure that this tube, this opening, is very narrow and sandwiched between two fat hot dog buns. Make sure that the other tube that we're about to label here, the larynx or trachea, is wide and open, because in real life it is wide and always open unless this lid is pushed down over the top, and that's the epiglottis. Remember, glottal, G-L-O-T-T, it refers to the tongue, so it's right next to the tongue, tengu, and then the oral cavity. Right? These are basically the must-know terms to be able to describe things in your notes accurately. So feel free to use this diagram, maybe color code the flaps as key things to track, right? Maybe draw and add to it your bolus or your food ball, and keep that the same color. So if you're watching the video and diagramming, I might choose something like, yellow maybe for my bolus. So here's my yellow piece of food. And then I'm going to track where is it the beginning. So the beginning of swallowing, this is where the flaps are, and this is where the yellow blob is. In the second phase, draw the flaps in their new position and the bolus in their new position, right? And that kind of helps you to break down the phases of swallowing a little bit more. All right, hope that helped, and we'll see you next time.